Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So this Dhamma is for one who is energetic, not for one who is lazy. Is another day of readings, and thought just to begin by reading Ajahn Geoff's translation from our root sutta to Anuruddha, Anguttara Book of Eights, number 30. It's a short paragraph, I'll just read it slowly. This Dhamma is for one whose persistence is aroused, not for one who is lazy. Thus was it said. With reference to what was it said? There is the case where a monk keeps his persistence aroused for abandoning unskillful mental qualities and taking on skillful mental qualities. He is steadfast, solid in his effort, not shirking his duties with regard to skillful mental qualities. This Dhamma is for one whose persistence is aroused, not for one who is lazy. Thus was it said, and with reference to this was it said. Okay. Now I'll be doing some readings on that theme. And that, by the way, was from Handful of Leaves, Volume 4. And I'll be doing a reading from this that I found in this Ajahn Geoff anthology, Recognizing the Dhamma. It's from Sutta Nipata, Book 3, number 2. And it seems to be from when the Buddha, having built up his parami, and he's doing the final striving to attain Buddhahood, attain enlightenment, and it's a back and forth between him and Mara. And just a few notes before I begin, that Namuchi, they'll speak of Namuchi, and Namuchi in this refers to Mara. And then the second note before I begin is there's one line where the Buddha, speaking to Mara, says, "Do I carry munja grass?" And there's a note in here explaining what that means. Munja grass was the ancient Indian equivalent of a white flag. A warrior expecting that he might have to surrender would take munja grass into battle with him. If he did surrender, he would lie down with the munja grass in his mouth. The Buddha, in asking this rhetorical question, is indicating that he is not the type of warrior who would carry munja grass. If defeated, he would rather die than surrender. So this is page 75 of Recognizing the Dhamma. This is the Buddha speaking. To me, resolute in exertion, near the river Naranjara, making a great effort, doing jhana to attain rest from the yoke, Namuchi came, speaking words of compassion. You are ashen, thin. Death is in your presence. Death has 1,000 parts of you. Only one part is your life. Live, good sir. Life is better. Alive, you can do acts of merit. You're living the holy life. Performing the fire sacrifice will heap up much merit. What use is exertion to you? Hard to follow the path of exertion. Hard to do, hard to sustain. Saying these verses, Mara stood in the awakened one's presence. And to that Mara, speaking thus, the Blessed One said this: Kinsman of the heedless, evil one, come here for whatever purpose. I haven't for merit even the least bit of need. Those who have need of merit, those are the ones Mara's fit to address. In me are conviction, austerity, persistence, discernment. Why, when I'm so resolute, do you petition me to live? This wind could burn up even river currents. Why, when I'm resolute, shouldn't my blood dry away? As my blood dries up, gall and phlegm dry up. As muscles waste away, the mind grows clearer. Mindfulness, discernment, concentration stand more firm. Staying in this way, attaining the ultimate feeling, the mind has no interest in sensual passions. See, a being's purity. Sensual passions are your first army. Your second is called discontent. Your third is hunger and thirst. Your fourth is called craving. Fifth is sloth and torpor. Sixth is called terror. Your seventh is uncertainty. Hypocrisy and stubbornness, your eighth. Gain offerings, fame, and status wrongly gained. And whoever would praise self and disparage others. That Nimuchi is your army, the Dark One's commando force. A coward can't defeat it, but one having defeated it gains bliss. Do I carry munja grass? I spit on my life. Death in battle would be better for me than that I, defeated, survive. Sinking here, they don't appear, some priests and contemplatives. They don't know the path by which those with good practices go. Seeing the bannered force on all sides, the troops, Mara along with his mount, I go into battle. May they not budge me from my spot. That army of yours, that the world with its devas can't overcome, I will smash with discernment as an unfired pot with a stone. Making my resolve mastered, mindfulness well established, I will go about from kingdom to kingdom, training many disciples. They, heedful, resolute, doing my bidding, despite your wishes, will go where, having gone, there's no grief. Then Mara speaks. For 7 years I've dogged the Blessed One's steps, but haven't gained an opening in this one self-awakened and glorious. A crow circled a stone the color of fat, saying, maybe I've found something tender here. Maybe there's something delicious. But not getting anything delicious there, the crow went away. Like the crow attacking the rock, I weary myself with Gautama. As he was overcome with sorrow, his lute fell from under his arm. Then he, the despondent spirit, right there disappeared. And now I'll just briefly touch on a reading on mindfulness of death, which is considered often used as to bring forth energy and as an antidote to laziness. And this begins a handful of leaves, volume 4, page 270. It's Anguttara 6's number 19, called Mindfulness of Death. And I'll just briefly say, actually, it connects to what this recording that I'll be playing mentions, in that there's various monks, bhikkhus, who say they develop mindfulness of death. They tell the Buddha that they develop mindfulness of death, and they give various time frames. One night might live for a day and a night, and then shorter and shorter and shorter. And the only one that the Buddha praises are those who think in terms of the interval that it takes to swallow, having chewed up one morsel of food, or for the interval that it takes to breathe out after breathing in, or to breathe in after breathing out. So I'll just read the conclusion to that. This is the Buddha speaking. But whoever develops mindfulness of death, thinking, "Oh, that I might live for the interval that it takes to breathe out after breathing in, or to breathe in after breathing out, that I might attend to the Blessed One's instructions, I would have accomplished a great deal." Those who think that are said to dwell heedfully. They develop mindfulness of death acutely for the sake of the ending of the effluence. Therefore, you should train yourselves. We will dwell heedfully. We will develop mindfulness of death acutely for the sake of the ending of the effluence. That is how you should train yourselves. Okay, and then the final item on this is, assuming technology cooperates, it will be a recording of Lumpur Sucitto, visiting, I believe, in 2013, and actually he was sitting right up there by that reception hall did not exist, so he was sitting right up there. And the title of it is Maranassati, the End of the Future. And actually, for whatever reason, this 11-minute piece was the only part that ended up being recorded, but it's quite a good 11 minutes. So I'll play now.
No, just today, as I was doing some walking meditation, just walking up and down the path and thinking, to lift the foot. What if, you might die before your foot touches the ground? Just bearing that in mind, taking the Maranassati to that level where you lift your foot, and you're assuming, the assumption is, I'm going to get to the end of the path. So I don't think it, I just assume it. I'm going to walk from here to get to there. And that's going to happen. Really? Who says that? It's not a thought, is it? It's not something I'm deliberately thinking and planning and scheming about. It's just this level of assumption and what that does. And I assume that in the back of my mind, I walk up and down for an hour, do walking meditation for an hour. So how long should I do walking meditation for? Some people say you should do a lot of it. I'm probably did 3 hours, 6 hours a day. Do I really need to do that? My feet, I get tired. I like to do sitting meditation. And this sort of stuff, and how long for, and what's the right system, the speed, and what walking meditation? It's already gone wrong. This isn't walking meditation. This is walking proliferation, which I'm quite good at already. Walking meditation is like something here is doing what we call walking. When you break it down, what is it? A series of sensations, and you just staying in the present with that. Staying present with that contact, impression. And then there's something there, still feeling there's a continuity, still feeling there's something there going on, There's something there accumulating that experience. There's something there that's doing the walking. You start to, where's that? What is it that sticks that point, that sensation to that memory? It says, I am walking. What's that? There's this sensation, and that sensation sits within a field of assumption of, that was, it's not verbal, but the assumption is there's somebody here doing the walking, and we'll go, we'll do 5 of these and so forth, this is going quite nicely, or whatever. What's that? This is for meditation, this is one of our, our difficulties, you could say, or our less apparent difficulties, because of course there are many challenges and difficulties, but the Buddha's pointing to certain root assumption difficulties. One of these is assumption of permanence. Assumption of permanence. It's an assumption, it's a perception. Anicca is a perception. The perception of permanence, which means this experience is stuck to a memory of a past experience, a sense of continuity. And that continuity will always engender a future. It will always engender the sense of something next. Yeah? Something happened a second ago, or a minute ago, so something will happen in another second's time, another minute's time. There will be a next. Yeah? This may not seem like a problem because it's the way we operate, but in meditation, for insight, it's exactly this piece we're starting to, cut or drop the sense of next. Because when the sense of next is there, this is called becoming, this is where it is, and then next, and then there'll be a next, and then where will it get me to? That starts to come in. How well am I doing? Where will it go to? What will happen after 10 minutes of this, or an hour of this, or how long does it take before I get somewhere with this? How long do you have to meditate? How many years do you have to meditate? How many lifetimes do you have to meditate before? That's where it starts with a second. It goes to a minute. It extends to an hour. It becomes a career. And it takes you to the next birth of next. And so when we prime the mind with Maranassati, you say, what about if there's no next? Why does there have to be a next? What's that? And it's just a piece of mental structure, a piece of mental concoction, a piece of mental imagination. There's just this. And there's no past in there either. So we begin to break up, or not keep concocting that tenacious piece of mythology of time. When time passes, time is not being created, desire, apprehension, gain and loss is not being created. And the self who's stuck in it, stuck in time, stuck in gain and loss, is not being created. This is the benefit. This is how it really comes to fruit, as the mind is then released from these concoctions. In meditation, this is something we can do. This is something we can tune into. We don't need the time there. Daily life, you have to bear that in mind. You try and clean up your becoming into something that's trim, suitable, not going to be a burden, not going to weigh you down. You trim it, you clean it, you rehearse it, you look at it, you groom it every day. What do you not need? Let your becoming be at least something you're conscious of and clear about and contented with. But then when you come to meditation, how much of that do you really need anymore? Because the Buddha was very clear, saying, the deathless Nibbana is the end of becoming. So to bear this in mind, this is where he goes to. In our lives, in our situation here, this wonderful opportunity, having been offered this teaching, the Buddha's teaching, place to practice, companions in the way, safe, trustworthy guardians, reasonable body. This is like, don't use it, don't quibble over it, don't get lost in the details. Don't get fussing about who's got the best knees, or whatever. Don't go there. This is like a raft of reeds on the ocean, like reeds, a raft of reeds. It will only last so long before it breaks up. But it's lasted long enough. This is the possibility of the sasana, the Buddha Dhamma, Abhayagiri Monastery, of this particular occasion that's come to us in our lives. It's a raft of reeds. It's going to be good enough, long enough, adequate to do what you need to learn to fly, to get off. Don't spend your time on a raft of reeds playing chess or fiddling around trying to shape it up. Just make it decent, clear, so you can do what you need to do. This is our way of recollecting, and then our lives are kind of free from entanglement and perpetuity and all that accumulation. And then we see, well, on this time, what can one bring forth in sharing, in friendship, companionship, encouragement? Let that be done. Please do it. Do it now. Do it now. Do it today. What is to be practiced? Practice now. Practice today. Do it clearly. This way we will use this raft for its true purpose. The Buddha said it's there like even the Dhamma itself. Carry us across, not to be carried around in your head afterwards. After you got to the other shore, just use it and keep it in good shape. We recollect this doesn't make us despise our bodies, but realise the precious opportunities they have to look after them so they become a vehicle for liberation. You look after the friendships and the companionships, not despise them or reject them because you're going to leave them, but treasure them as something we have this day for, precious day for. It's quite likely, it seems unlikely, that I'll see all of you again before I die. So is there something to be said, something to be done, something to be encouraged? I do it now.
Is that all you had, Ajahn Ṭhitapañño?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Can anybody top that?
Just wanted to share my feelings on something. In terms of like the carrot and the stick being, body contemplation, death contemplation. I just think it's really important to also be aware of the carrot while having that contemplation. The idea that there's something beyond, that there's this deathless quality, or this thing that's described as so wonderful in the canon.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, actually. I think in our tradition, we do tend to focus more on, obviously in the suttas, the Buddha, you can't say anything about Nibbana. So he doesn't say too much about it. But I've also found that a beneficial reflection, sort of having something to shoot for, instead of just focusing on the drawbacks, which I think is obviously crucial aspect of the practice, but yeah, so like someone like Ajahn Sucitto, for example, who does tend to talk about that a lot, the deathless and awareness and so forth. So yeah, I can appreciate what you're saying.
That's the whole reason Ajahn Pasino and Ajahn Amro did the Nibbana book, was to define the carrot more clearly.
Yeah, it's like the reflection that we do. If it weren't for the fact that there is an unconditioned, the Nibbana, if it weren't for that fact, then there would be no escape. So, yeah, it's a very important thing to keep in mind. Do that recitation. And, doing all the practices when we talk about the ones that brighten the mind, metta bhavana, and all the recollections that of all the good stuff that there is that buoy us and support us. It's the balance that has to be taken.
And then I think on the other side, to go back to the Maranassati, when Ajahn Dun was here, a question I asked him was described sometimes getting into a mental state of just total vibhavatana, just not wanting anything, not wanting to be a monk, not wanting to go back to the world, not wanting to be alive, just totally just fed up. And interestingly, his advice was death contemplation, which you think love and kindness, faith, brightening the mind, but it was death contemplation. There's a recording of it somewhere. And it was like, oh, jeez. It just took days of really? And then, trying it obviously, because it's Ajahn Dun, and you're gonna, at least try it, because that's his specific advice. And there's benefit to it for myself. And I guess with all the stuff we're talking about, just one just tries it for oneself, and one thing's right for this person at this time and not right at that time, and interesting.
The other thing I think of along those lines, with Maranassati, with death contemplation, is yes, there is that aspect of it when you think about, am I going to live to take my next in-breath or my next out-breath, that is intended to rise that sense of urgency, And there's also the result of it, that it isn't, at least in my experience anyway, it isn't a negative, it doesn't throw me into a negative state of mind or a depressed state of mind or a fearful state of mind. It actually, and I think if it's doing what it's supposed to do, and at times it does for me, is it brings me into this moment, and actually the relief of not having to think about stuff, the future, the plan for the future, or maybe there isn't a future. Well, isn't that, in a sense? Then I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to have anxiety about it. I don't have to plan for it, at least in this moment of meditation. And the effect is, actually far from negative or depressing. The effect is actually peaceful, cooling, uplifting. So it's kind of just another aspect of something that we usually think of as this kind of dull or depressing or difficult. Actually has a benefit to uplift the mind.
For me, one of the reasons why death contemplation, has the flavor, the connotation of that sort of, of not being happy or not, not being uplifting, I think it's partially cultural. Because, most of us, I think, are coming from essentially materialist culture, where death is the end, capital E, end of everything, like the body and all of that. Whereas in the Asian culture, when the Buddha was teaching, he did have the deathless in mind, or even heavenly realms, So the end of the body is not the ultimate end to everything. And so the contemplation of death, I think, brings about those beautiful bright mind states when it's in a context where there's an alternative. To say where, death isn't just the end of everything, but it's the end of something, it's the end of this body, and yet there are mental constituents, there is karma, there is all this whole other spectrum of experience that is not contained within the body or tied to the body in an identity way. And so when you have death contemplation in that broader context, then it really, it allows us to rearrange our values to align with those longer-term, higher goals that have more to do with the mental aspects and the deathless aspects of.
Yeah, so it's It's like death isn't what's depressing, it's living life confused. It's depressing. Living a confused life.
And too, Ajahn Sucitto does such a great job of even imbuing the death contemplation itself with metta and compassion and all these positive qualities. So, for me, it's not just like, first I do death to get all, sort of sober and heavy, and then I do, metta to forget all about that, sugarcoat everything. It's like, how can I combine them so that the sobering is at the same time brightening? And that's when, you're doing death contemplation with a motivation of metta or an intention of metta behind it.
Yeah.
The softness.
Yeah, and it's like I was mentioning the other night, the two of those for myself came together with my mother's passing, It was just a pure manifest.
I was thinking also kind of relationship with what Ajahn was saying is that like if you think about it kind of in the traditional Buddhist worldview of rebirth and other realms and such, that death contemplation is kind of like with where we were at, we have just about the best opportunity to develop wholesome karma and develop the mind, and so it's kind of like it gives a sense of urgency, kind of in relationship to things that Ajahn Sucitto was talking about, like just being within the Buddhist asana and having the teachings and being in such a good place to practice. It's like we don't know that is for certain. We don't know when it's going to happen, but might as well practice as hard as we can, because who knows next life what situation will be there. So I guess that's another angle on it also.
It seems to me if your death contemplation if it's depressing or negative energy, it just seems like it's just steeped in becoming, heavily just in becoming. Whereas it can be just sort of, sobering. If you're contemplating, I could be dying you're dying right now. It's like, what do you want to have in your mind? Do you want to be depressed, or do you want to me it just seems like I don't know, like a bright thing. It kind of clears away the fog. I don't want to be, if I'm dying, the last thing I'm going to be is just kind of having my mind all tangled up with minutiae and whatnot. It just seems like we're just bring more clarity and what's really important. And those tend to be wholesome, bright states, not what's going to happen to me, when I die, or where am I going. That's the becoming part. That seems where the worry and depression come in.
It also, for me, it highlights death contemplation. It brings up where is the clinging, or what am I clinging to? So if it is depressing, there's some sort of clinging there, death contemplation. Yeah, I could die before this walking meditation session's over, but I've got this project I need to finish. So then I might suffer, but then it's I need to look at that. Because the truth is, you could die before the next footfall goes down. But then the mind is no, probably not. So it's you make it very real that way.
It also strikes me that the Buddhist wisdom in using the stick language so frequently, what we're giving up, it's apophatic language. It's called defining what is by saying what we're not. You're not this body, you're not this. Let go of all this stuff, but not really defining what you're letting go into beyond, nirvana. Is that because those things we're letting go of are so much more coarse, and we know them and can point to them, that negating them was a really safe way of establishing a teaching that was clear and would last for ages. Whereas if you start to use language about God or whatever, it gets really convoluted fast, and I'm like, I don't know how long a teaching like that could remain clear. But then you look at like the Buddha's wisdom and creating that like kernel of a teaching which would last and which was clear, and then how it's planted in different cultures, and then it's almost like the Buddha just trusted it to grow into this flower which did have those colors and that brightness to it. And you see that like the Tibetan art, Zen poetry, like every culture that seed has been planted in has born its own articulation of the deathless. And I think an interesting project is in the West that's always lacked that articulation after Christianity, at least. Like, I think so many of the Western Ajahns are doing exactly that. Like they're articulating the, what we're moving towards, because it's like every culture kind of has to do that for itself, almost, maybe.